Welcome back to another edition of the UP Power Podcast with me, Kevin McNulty, and Keegan Cooper. Keegan, you were out sick last week. You're good to go.
Yeah.
It was a busy weekend here in the UP, another one. We're talking football, hockey, even, of course, we had the big basketball game 10 days ago. We'll touch on that later in the podcast, but I want to start in the NFL because this division is nutty. I'm, of course, talking about the NFC North, where the Lions are now in the lead after taking down the Vikings on Sunday. They were undefeated previously. Now both of those teams with one loss. Of course, Detroit has the head-to-head, and Green Bay with, the kind of wins you need in this league over good teams at home. They got it done. A pair of walk-off field goals for both of those teams this week. Let's start with the Lions because, man, they continue to impress. Jared Goff is getting some MVP talk, I think deservedly so. Of course, Lamar Jackson is definitely playing at an MVP level too. He's last year's winner, two-time MVP. But the Lions offense, even Vikings had played some of the best defense in the league to this point. Brian Flores brings the heat quite a bit. Lions like to get tricky. They tried to fake punt, and that didn't work. They kind of went away from that and just beat them the way they have beat teams all year. And it was kind of a weird game. I said this to you where, the Vikings took an early lead. The Lions storm all the way back and take a big lead, but Minnesota's not out of it. They definitely proved that they belong to hang in a class with the Lions. But in the end, 31-29, Detroit gets it done.
Yeah, and I think what impressed me with this game and with this division too is it was back and forth, and you didn't know what was going to happen, and that just goes to show, I think, how good the NFC North is. And when you have Detroit and Minnesota, the top two teams in the division, going at each other, that is what makes the NFL so much fun, and I think that's what just adds to this division. Because really, right now, still anybody's division to take,
Oh, absolutely. We're only 7 weeks in. Lions sitting at 5-1, Vikings right there with them, and then the Packers, at 5-2. So they're knotted up. The Bears are right there at 4-2. They were on a bye this week. So yeah, it's fun. It's going to come down to the wire. But I don't think for the Lions you can overstate how big of a win this one was in their first divisional game. Of course, they have 5 more to go. But you look down the barrel of the Lions season and what they have ahead, well, you got the the Titans coming into Ford Field this week. You obviously feel good about that one. And then you got to go on the road to Green Bay. So it starts getting harder as you go through the season. That's kind of the case for all these NFC North teams. They really loaded it up towards the end of the season with these divisional games. You just look at the Lions, 4 out of their last 6 games are in the division. The other 2 games are the Bills and the 49ers. So that's a tough way to finish, but at the same time, you're Detroit. You feel like you're one of the best teams in the league, probably right now. I would say the best team in the NFC. So these are games you should win, but when you have games like the Titans coming up this weekend, you just stack wins and you get back in the division and hit the ground running. I have no idea what kind of 49ers team that will be in Week 17, but they're still the San Francisco 49ers. I'd still, pump the brakes on saying, they're out of it or anything like that. That's still the team that represented the NFC in the Super Bowl a year ago. But the Lions are just in a great spot despite the Hutchinson injury. The pass rush wasn't great. It wasn't flashy, but I think, and we haven't talked about this yet, I think they have to go get somebody. Just when you look around the league and you see the talent on the defensive line for some of these teams that are falling out of it quickly, I'm talking about Las Vegas, excuse me. How many years have they been there now? But Max Crosby with the Raiders, they're falling out of it.
Yeah.
That's a guy that played college football at Eastern Michigan. Is he a candidate to come in? How much is Brad Holmes willing to give up for a guy like that? I'm thinking about Myles Garrett, who's not too far away in Cleveland. They're falling out of it quickly. A former Defensive Player of the Year himself. Joshua Hines-Allen in Jacksonville. There's guys out there, how much is Brad Holmes willing to throw out to have a guy like that down the stretch? Trade deadline, November 5th. The most important thing happening in this country on November 5th is the NFL trade deadline. But they have a few weeks to decide if that's the right move. I think you do it because this is your team.
At least go see what's out there, even if nothing occurs. You got to put feelers out, and you probably got to.
I think they definitely are right now.
Yeah.
Just testing the availability of guys like that. Because it's not to say they can't do it without Hutch. It's just, why would you kind of punt on improving that side of the ball when you have a guy that could have been the Defensive Player of the Year, no doubt, in my mind, in Aiden Hutchinson this year? Replace him. Get better. You're already probably the best team in the NFC, like I said. It's your year. You said it's Super Bowl. Go get somebody. And I'm not, meleeing on it, but I just think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, because he was such a big part of the defense.
Yeah, it's 6 sacks.
Yeah, so I agree. I think you got to go get somebody. We got to touch on Jake Bates about his. I don't know if you saw his story or know much about him, but Arkansas
I did.
guy,
Yeah.
And his journey to get where he is now, that is the biggest.
He was selling bricks a year ago, and then kicking in the UFL, and he was for the Michigan team. So that worked out well. Big justice stance when he knocked in the kick at the end. That was huge, and we'll get to the Packers in a minute. Their kicker, proved to be very clutch. He's been there, done that in the league. But I also want to touch on the Lions' defense without Hutch. The secondary has been great. Brian Branch is turned into one of the best defensive backs in the league because they use him so many different ways. They'll drop him back into coverage. He'll be up playing nickel sometimes as well. That pick of Sam Darnold, it was not a good throw by Darnold, but also not really a ball that you expect Branch to catch, and he does. And that was a huge play in that game. So I think the defense, like I said, will be okay without Hutch, but why not go make it better when you are missing one of the best players in the league on that side of the ball. Packers now 3 in a row. All 3 games you kind of expected them to win, given the fact that it was the Rams and the Cardinals, and then the Texans at home.
Yeah.
On a nice day in Green Bay, they were wearing the winter warning jerseys. There were no signs of winter out there. It was 75 degrees and sunny. It was a beautiful day, but the Texans, really good defense, really good team. Jordan Love throws a couple more picks. I mean, you don't love that, but he also throws for 3 touchdowns. And I think the Packers have the most passing touchdowns from 10-plus yards out this season.
Yeah.
He's kind of playing like Brett Favre right now, and if you're a Packers fan, you're not going to complain about that, right? And Matt LaFleur lets him go.
Yeah.
The interceptions, he doesn't get too butt about either. That Rams game, that pick 6 he threw, that was bad. But even then, LaFleur showed confidence in his guy. It's like, that was a bad play. He's going to admit that, but at the same time, he just kind of watches it after it happens, where he comes back and Love, that's why these guys get paid the big bucks. He moved the ball when they needed to move the ball to get that last field goal from Brandon McManus, and that's why they won the game 24-22.
Yeah, and I'm looking at his stat line here, 24-33, 220 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. You're not happy with the interceptions. Nobody is, but they win at the end of the day, and that's what matters. They get it done.
Look at what Mahomes is doing. He has the most interceptions in the league, just ahead of Love.
Yeah.
He's throwing more picks than he has touchdowns, and the Chiefs are 6-0. Nobody's saying anything bad about Patrick Mahomes because why would you? I think Ryan Clark said it on Monday Night Countdown yesterday. We've gotten to the point, at least the national media has for sure, where there's no real point in being critical of the Chiefs because they just keep winning.
Yeah.
And they keep winning Super Bowls.
Yeah, and they're winning. The thing, they're winning without their guys.
Yeah, if Mahomes isn't playing well, maybe he's not in the MVP conversation right now because he's not playing well, but you don't knock the team because their star quarterback isn't playing as well as we know he's capable of because they're 6-0. They just keep winning. And the Packers, like I said, have won 3 in a row. They're 5-2. If Love isn't perfect and they keep winning games, that's how it's going to go. That's how it goes in this league. You're going to be happy with the results as long as it's a W. Brandon McManus came in. I mean, that kind of came out of nowhere, where, Brian Gutekunst and the coaching staff, I imagine, came to a point with Braden Arbison, like, we can't keep doing this. We can't end up losing games because our kicker's unreliable. Yeah. There's this guy, Brandon McManus, out there who has won a Super Bowl with the Broncos, was great for them in many years, and a strange place to kick in Mile High Stadium when he was with Denver. Of course, he was with Jacksonville last year, and that's when he was accused of sexual assault on an airplane. Hadn't been signed by a team until the Packers said, looked into the NFL's investigation and how they handled it, and Gutekunst said they relied on that quite a bit as they were making the decision to sign him, and probably the right move. As long as they got a guy that, for all his years in Denver, didn't make headlines off the field. So if that was a one-off where the thing is totally settled, it was a civil suit anyway. Why not bring in a guy that can do something like that? He gets to Lambeau Leap after winning the game for Green Bay. That was a good pickup by Gutekunst and won him the game in the end.
It did, and now in the NFL, we look at how many good teams there are that are quality, and they're all good, but there's some teams that are at the bottom. They're just this. That's with any league. They're
mostly in the AFC.
Yeah, you need to have all parts of your teams, your offense, your defense, your special teams. You've got to have that down the stretch, and they do in McManus, I think.
I would agree. It just looks like it paid dividends already. Now the Packers go on the road to the Jaguars, so having the AFC South on the schedule is probably helpful to both of these teams, the Lions and the Packers, right now, as they, like I said, keep trying to stack wins. They keep doing that. I see no reason why both teams won't win again this weekend. Of course, the NFL any given Sunday, but the Jaguars, they've beaten the Patriots.
Yeah. Two claps. Yeah.
But I mean, they're a 2-win team. The Vikings are Titans are a 1-win team coming into Detroit. Like, got to win those games, and then the two meet on November 3rd. So it's not far until we have that battle, which everyone's going to be locked into. It's the late game on Fox, so you'll have Tom Brady in the building. That one's at Green Bay. So looking ahead to that, but of course you can't look too far ahead and overlook the AFC South teams that they have to take on this weekend. Do we want to talk high school football now?
Yes, we can. Last point for me here on the NFL. Are the Jets saved now that Devontae Adams is there?
Yeah, we know. We should talk about this.
3 catches for 30 yards.
But a heck of a tackle.
Yeah.
You really want your wide receiver making tackles.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
I find it so amusing what has happened with the Jets. I do feel bad for Jets fans, but the fact that they gave 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers the keys to the entire car. Every last piece.
Every car.
Who's the friend that's going to come in and save them this week? I guess Hassan Reddick is finally signed and is going to play this week for the Jets. Not, a previous teammate of Aaron Rodgers, but you just look at how they've completely made Rodgers the centerpiece of the franchise, and sure, maybe in his prime he should be. He's the quarterback, so he's still, deserves to be the focal point of your team. But the fact that you hire Nathaniel Hackett because Aaron Rodgers is your QB, and then you have to take away the play calling duties from Nathaniel Hackett because he's not getting the job done. Yeah. And then you bring in Alan Lazard has been solid, but Randall Cobb last year, what are we doing?
Yeah,
all these former Packers that had success with Rodgers previously, and then last year, of course, it wasn't Rodgers out there because he got injured 4 plays into the season, and you have Zach Wilson throwing to Randall Cobb, and it's like, what are we doing? And obviously Devontae Adams, being in his early 30s, is still productive.
Yeah.
at the same time, is that the fix? It wasn't Sunday night, like you said, only the 3 catches. So what's next? You got your head coach fired. You know, where do they go?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so funny, but Rodgers himself doesn't look good.
No, he doesn't, and it's almost like they're trying to build an older version of the Green Bay Packers. You know, just bring everybody back that used to play.
Which
there.
doesn't work, man.
Yeah, no. It's
Evidently, it
unfortunate. Yeah.
doesn't. Like I said, maybe if you had 34-year-old Aaron Rodgers, you'd be just fine. But this guy, coming off an Achilles tear, doesn't look like himself, and all of his buddies that he's brought in haven't helped him enough.
No.
So curious to see how that one plays out. High school football, we start with what was a phenomenal game Friday night between Menominee and Kingsford. Probably the 2 best teams. We'll find out what Iron Mountain is this Thursday when they host Negaunee. They're still undefeated as well, just like Kingsford. So the 2 Dickinson County teams they're representing. But for all we've seen this year, Menominee and Kingsford, the 2 best teams.
Yeah.
So evenly matched, and I found it amazing that the Kingsford defense, I mean, both defenses played well.
Yeah.
When you look at the final score, it's 13-12. A lot of that scoring didn't happen until the 4th quarter even. It was only 6-0 at halftime. So you think about Menominee's offense got stopped.
Yeah.
And they're, unstoppable force, immovable object maybe with Kingsford's defense, but we'll get to Kingsford. For Menominee, how do you pick up the pieces and really address what went wrong? Because to this point, the offense hasn't looked like that. It's been high flying for 7 straight games, and it changed on Friday.
Yeah, and I think and we talked about this earlier, after the game on Friday. I think it was good for Menominee.
Yeah.
From a standpoint of growing.
Remember, they had 2 regular season losses a year ago to Kingsford and to Negaunee, and they handled Negaunee. I thought Menominee was going to win this game, but at the same time, I do have faith that they'll be able to, move through it. They should win their final regular season game. So finish the regular season 8-1, then you're going into the Division 7 playoffs, where obviously you had a great run last year. The team that beat you in the end, the state champions, Jackson Lumen Christi, not in your division anymore.
Yeah.
They're up to D6. So you have to be feeling good about that aspect, but also probably very important that they learned a lot from this Kingsford game.
Yeah, and I think take a lot from it, reflect on it, probably work on some things in their last regular season game that they saw. Where were the breakdowns offensively, and what did Kingsford do well, and how do we adjust from that? And I think that they'll do that in their last regular season game, and then take that into the postseason.
For Kingsford,
wow, man, they're playing great football.
They are, and they're top to bottom a really, really good football team. When they needed it, 4th and goal in that 4th quarter, Gavin Grondin's there. He's the guy for Nick Navarre, and they play so well together. Obviously, I've talked about the Kingsford defense stepping up to hold Menominee to 12 points, and it comes down to an extra point. Can you believe that in UP football? The extra point is the difference in a 13-12 game. But the Kingsford just gets it done top to bottom. I said it on their offense. They have weapons that are talented. Took them a while to get going, and maybe they never really did get going on Friday, but they did enough to walk out of there, 8-0.
Yeah, and I mean, it's finding a way to win, and I think Nick Navarre, being a veteran quarterback, is so good for them. And he said, last time I talked to him, he said something really that stuck with me was, you win UP high school football games up front on the line. If the line does their job, it opens everything else up. And we kind of talked about that touchdown play, where he finds Gavin Grondin. He's like, I had time. I had a little bit of more time because the line kind of held, and I was able to find him. And I think that's true, right? When we look at anything, how successful is your line, offensively and defensively? What are they doing on both sides of the ball? And for Kingsford, They're solid on defense, and offensively, they're giving Navarro almost all the time that he wants or needs to find the open guy. And that's why they're successful. Also, Coach Navarro, I mean, come on.
Yeah,
he's great.
I mean, you said the veteran presence of Navarro was huge, and I agree, because he threw a pick earlier in that game that really could have swung the momentum. Menominee goes up by a touchdown, 6 points. They don't, get the 2 point, but for him to respond and come back in the fourth quarter, that's big, and especially for two teams that haven't been in that tight of a game.
No.
Even Menominee last week against Negaunee, it wasn't a blowout, but they pulled away in the end where it wasn't, pins and needles, 2 minutes left, and for Kingsford, we got to score on fourth down, and they get it done. So that's really impressive, especially for high school athletes to have that kind of poise in that type of game. Very impressive. So Kingsford 8-0, Menominee 7-1. Kingsford in D5. Their road through the postseason will be tougher, but everything we've seen so far shows us that they could make a really, really deep run. Now for Menominee, it's not a cupcake in Week 9 by any means. Bark River Harris is fighting for a playoff spot. They're above 500 right now. They've lost to Iron Mountain twice. It's tough to have Iron Mountain on the schedule, more than once. But besides that, they've only lost to Westwood in Week 1. So Bark River Harris, they're going to show up to Bletchfield, wanting to knock off Menominee big time. The Maroons have to respond to this loss, I think, and show that they're one of the best teams in D7. They could be headed back to Ford Field, which you and I both still believe they're capable of. So we'll find out on Friday. Also Friday, Kingsford and Marquette. That's our game of the week. Marquette, 2 losses on the year, both to downstate teams. Going into Kingsford will be tough. The Flivers probably the favorite, but this should be a good one. Another good test for Kingsford to close out the season.
No, it is too, and I think one of the big things for Kingsford is now they're playing, and I talking with the coach in Navarre about this, they went on the road and played a tough opponent at Bletchfield against Menominee. Now they're home against a tough opponent. Marquette, solid. Ford Richardson at quarterback. Their offensive line does the right things. Defensively, they're good. Richardson has receivers, so Kingsford's defense is going to have to be great in the secondary to limit, Marquette throwing the deep ball, right? Ford can do that. At the same time,
we've said they throw the ball more than pretty much every UP team.
So there's a lot of factors. Ford at the same time can roll out and run the ball. So Kingsford defense is going to have to be, solid on all avenues, stopping the run, but not giving up, deep passes, because Ford Richardson has the arm and the ability to do that. Marquette on the other side, same thing. Nick Navarro isn't afraid to let it fly, and he can. And I would argue almost Kingsford's receivers are maybe just this more athletic than Marquette's.
I don't know.
Though.
Because, Kyler Sager has proven, over the course of the season that he is a big-time pass catcher for Richardson and the Sentinels. And you think about Jacob McPhee and that size, which we've talked about before, is pretty huge as well. And, I mentioned Marquette's 2 losses. Petoskey's undefeated. They went down there and it was a battle like we saw in the playoffs last year, 28-23 in the end. We've gotten some better games the past couple of weeks. That one was definitely included in there. So you go down to Petoskey, you battle. The only other loss was that game at Lowell where it just didn't look like they had it on a Saturday. But Cadillac came into Marquette Saturday, and the Sentinels handled them. It wasn't an easy game, but they put up 41 points again and come out on top. So that's a good win. And, if you're Marquette, you got to like your chances. I mentioned Kingsford probably the favorite, but, Marquette at 6-2, they've looked really good. They're on their way back to the postseason, once again. So close out with a big win at Kingsford, you're feeling really good heading into the postseason, even though their road, of course, will be even tougher than Kingsford's. So
I agree.
we'll see what happens. The other marquee game in 11-man this weekend is actually a Thursday night game between Negaunee and Iron Mountain. We talk about Iron Mountain, undefeated. They're 8-0. They've looked great. They haven't played anyone quite to the caliber of Negaunee, so really excited to see the Mountaineers in that situation. You know, what do they get out of Ian Martela, their quarterback, and Alex Jane, who's been terrific for them all season as their running back? You know, how do they match up against a team like Negaunee? That's what I'm looking at, really, is the Negaunee defense and Alex Jane. Can he do what he's been doing all season long? And Negaunee's tough. We saw it at Kingsford. You know, their 2 losses were at Kingsford and at home to Menominee. So really good teams, and they were right there, especially with Kingsford. They came back in that second half. So we've seen Negaunee be battle-tested. They have 2 losses as a result. We haven't seen Iron Mountain get tested. They're undefeated as a result. So it'll be really good to see these teams on the same field Thursday night. We had this game in Negaunee last year. It was cold and wet, and Iron Mountain handled the Miners. You know, I don't want to say with ease, but they took care of business.
They took care of business, yeah.
When it was the same situation where it's like, okay, who has Iron Mountain played? Who have they beat? Well, they showed that didn't matter a season ago. Slightly different team here, but you still have some of those horses. You have the same quarterback. You have Oscar Kangas, who's a guy like McPhee that I talk about, has size that not many, UP players can match up with. So he's an X factor for me, and that's what I'm really paying attention to. On the other end, Ty Jacobson and the Miners offense, I think, will be steady as it has been pretty much all year.
No, yeah. These last...
But Iron Mountain's good on defense, too. You like to think.
Yeah.
Again, they haven't faced a team that could maybe put up 30 on them. You know, you think about Menominee is a solid team. They've scored 3 touchdowns in each of those battles, but weren't able to stop the Mountaineers on defense. So they've played Menominee. That's probably the best team they've played, and they've given up points. So I expect the Miners offense to go down there and score the same way they have all year, throwing when they need to, and then giving to the backs. Talking Bonovitz and Weston Yesney. That's been working. They'll do more of that. They'll put up points, but will it be enough? I like Iron Mountain at home, but I don't know. I'm excited for this one too.
Yeah, I mean the Marquette Kingsford game, it's a coin flip. Negaunee Iron Mountain, it's a coin flip. It's going to come down to Friday night, Thursday night for Negaunee Iron Mountain. Who comes out? I think who starts early, who gets that momentum. And can continue with that momentum, right?
For sure.
But they're going to be good. Those 2 games right there are going to be battle tests. And I argue it will be good for all 4 of those teams to be battle tested right before they go into the playoffs.
Well, flipping over to 8-man for a minute, Norway hosted Pickford on Friday. That was really unfortunate that Colby couldn't be out there. I know it might be a few weeks till he's back and really, ready to go at quarterback for the Knights. They didn't have much of a chance without their guy who's been doing it all year.
Yeah.
So that's the unfortunate part. It was a blowout win for Pickford. Pickford's undefeated. We definitely could be talking about them, winning an 8-man state title. They are that good. And so is Forest Park, who hosts North Central on Friday. I'm really looking forward to that one because North Central has really come on since that one early season loss. They look like the team that we've seen over the past 10 or so years right now. So go up against the best this week in Forest Park. Pickford and Forest Park, the 2 undefeated 8-mans here in the UP. Well, we'll see if North Central has something to say about that with their 1 loss on Friday. That'll be fun.
Yeah, you can't not talk about the North Central Jets when you talk about 8-man football, and they really have. After that 1 loss, you look at the rest of their schedule, and they really come on and played what I would consider North Central Jets football.
And that was week 1 to Pickford.
Yeah.
40-12. It didn't go well, but Pickford, obviously, they're cream of the crop.
Yeah.
In 8-man, everyone else, they haven't played the the top teams, like I'm saying, besides Pickford and now Forest Park. So we'll see how much better the Jets have gotten from week 1 to week 9 when they take the field in Crystal Falls on Friday.
It's exciting to me to be here at the end of the regular season, and we get some of these matchups where, potentially we're looking, if we talk about the UP poll, all 5 of those teams in 11 player that are on the poll, Kingsford,
who we've been talking about,
Menominee, Marquette, Iron Mountain,
and Nagani.
All have
4 of those teams are playing each other. Another ranked team this weekend.
Yeah. All of those teams have a chance to do something special in the postseason.
Yep.
They have the talent, they have the ability, and they have the experience, right? 8-man, same kind of similar story, right? Pickford, Forest Park, North Central, Munising, Norway.
Yep.
They've all been there,
Yep.
right? So it's this last week and headed into the postseason, it's going to be exciting here in the UP for high school football.
Yeah, and then that Sunday we find out the postseason matchups: who's in, who's out, who you playing in the first round. That's Bally Sports Detroit sometime on next Sunday, whatever day that is. I believe the 27th. I want to say of October. So then we're rearing to go, and playoffs are here. We'll stay with football, but go to the college ranks. Do you want to talk Tech or NMU?
Let's start with Michigan Tech.
Okay, tough one at Ferris this past weekend.
Yeah, they are. Ferris State is a top dog in the GLIAC for football, and they just weren't. Michigan Tech wasn't firing on all cylinders.
Which they needed to be.
Yeah, they needed to
have a chance.
To play that.
Yeah,
they have to brush that off. They have to. They know what they have to do to be successful against those teams, and I think it was a case of it just not their day, right? Which happens. Sometimes it's your day, sometimes it's not. I think.
Yeah, and when it's not against a team like that, they got punched in the mouth too. It was 20-0 after the first quarter.
Yeah,
that's pretty deflating.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. On top of it not being their day, they're going up against a really, really good team. I mean, they caused problems for Freeze, all afternoon. He was 20 for 46. He threw the ball 46 times, as obviously they were chasing pretty much that entire game, only threw for 158 yards. So, they just gave him a lot of trouble from the jump.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a ton that Tech could do, in my opinion. Darius Willis had 10 catches, 68 yards, so they were not even able to get D-Will going.
Yeah.
And that's tough for the offense when, like I said, the Bulldogs just kind of had their way with the Tech defense early on, and that was kind of the game at that point. But Ferris and Grand Valley going up against each other this weekend.
That'd be a good
It's
one.
a good rivalry. I wish we were covering that rivalry instead of the one here in the UP. It's been pretty lopsided lately, but I think for Tech, you're feeling all right, especially knowing who you have on Saturday.
Yeah, and I mean, head coach Dan Metlack did say, it's a loss. Obviously, they're not happy with the loss. There are some bright sides to that Ferris game. The second quarter, they played really well, I think, on both sides of the football. They did the right things. But when you put yourself in a hole early, it's really hard to overcome that. You look at Saturday's game, it's they have to go in, or they have to just go out there and take care of business, right? I think for Michigan Tech, they have to start early, and they have to kind of put their foot on the gas and keep it on there. They know what to expect.
Well, do they? Let's get into NMU. Obviously, the Miners' Cup last season at the Dome, 62-0. Are the Huskies going to try and top that?
I don't know. I'm going to put the over/under at 50 points, because here's my thing: if you get up
for Michigan Tech, to be clear.
Yeah, just for Michigan Tech.
Not the combined over/under.
Not the combined score. Yeah, 50 for Michigan Tech. Because here's my thing: if you get up early, and you're up and you have a comfortable 3-touchdown lead, do you pull your starters and give some of your younger guys?
No, he didn't do that last year.
No, so he may not. I don't know.
I don't know if he's inclined to do that this year. I'm talking about Dan Metlack. because he didn't pull in the reins in that Miners Cup game a year ago. I don't know if anything's changed. But Northern Michigan, again, not a good football team heading into this matchup. They are winless. They are 0-7. The reason I hesitated when you said Michigan Tech knows what to expect, I don't know if they do. It might not matter at the end of the day whether they know what NMU is going to do in this one. I'm talking specifically about their offense and running the option and not throwing the ball. The past couple of weeks, they haven't completed a pass the last 2 weeks, the last 2 games, because they're running the option. It works at times, but at the same time, you only scored 10 points in the overtime loss to Roosevelt. And let's talk about that game. 16-10 in the end. Roosevelt wins it. This was the game we had circled
and
before the year
and underlined
and said this is the one they have to win. And they go to overtime and they lose. They're 0-7. They're 0-18 since the start of 2023. It's bad news, and just if they were able to flip the coin the other way in overtime, it would be such a different feeling. But looking down the barrel, you got Michigan Tech, you got Ferris State, you got Davenport, and then you're at Wayne State to close out the year. And maybe, just maybe, the football gods give you one.
Yeah.
Well, they're not just going to give it to you. You got to go out there and win the game, but maybe they give you a bad showing from Wayne State.
Yeah,
and you have a chance in that one, but man, not winning this game is just brutal.
It is, and they had the opportunities to do it. 2 fumbles, the fumble in overtime. That's just
on 3rd and 1.
It's taking care of the football, right? If you're going to run the option, right? If that is I'm going to say it because in my eyes it is, the identity of Northern Michigan now is that they're going to run the option. They're going to run the football. They're not going to throw it. And even if they do throw it, they're going to throw, only a few times.
Well, we've talked about this too. How can Aiden Horde have any sort of confidence, at this point? He hasn't played well, but he hasn't been trusted to do anything.
Yeah.
So now I would agree with you that that's probably the identity of their offense. They're trying to be an option type team. You see Army and Navy are ranked in D1 right now. They're both undefeated. They do it. Mm-hmm. Army threw the ball 10 times in a 20-point win against East Carolina this weekend. So there's teams that can do it. Vanderbilt does it a little bit.
Yeah.
They knocked off Alabama a couple weeks ago. There's a reason why you turn to it, but when you score 10 points against Roosevelt, is that really the answer at the end of the day? I think we're talking about this because they don't have a ton of answers.
Yeah.
And I asked Shane Richardson, was it out of necessity or is it really just you thinking that's the best option, the best way to try and move the ball and win the game, Probably a little bit of both is pretty much what he said. So you're grasping for straws with this team, and it might be bad news. And Houghton, of course, you can watch that one on TV6 Saturday afternoon, noon kick in Houghton. It's supposed to be 50 degrees and sunny. I will take it any day of the week. So we'll have good weather for you. We'll have a good show for you. Probably, especially if you're a Tech fan.
Yeah, and you've got to, if you are Northern Michigan, you've got to go in there and you've got to play, right?
You've got to play with pride.
Yeah, you got to play with pride, and you can't. And I will say this: I've watched enough of Northern Michigan, home games this year. Like in that Roosevelt game, they were up the entire time.
Yeah.
Right? They played for 4 quarters. It just didn't go their way, and it's the fumbles and some key things.
Well, the thing on top of that is they haven't played in a game that close.
No,
the last 2 years, so
they've been chasing.
They don't necessarily know how to win those games.
Yeah.
Which didn't help.
Yeah, it's a tough.
But it helps not to fumble in overtime on 3rd down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad news. Like I said, they still haven't won. I don't see a win on the schedule until perhaps the final week of the season. That's on the road at Wayne State, a team that's on paper better than you, because on paper, every team in the GLIAC is better than you now. That Roosevelt came into your house and won their first D2 game. There's that too.
Yeah, first D2 game, first conference game.
You made history for the team on the other side. Brutal. But
Wayne State could be winless in that matchup. They're winless right now. They do play Roosevelt before.
yeah, they're not good either.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Just going on the road against any other team in this conference, I
Tough.
can't think, NMU has a leg up on any of these teams, because you even think about Wayne State lost to Ferris by 13.
Yeah.
They lost to Tech by 15.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see if they come up with anything. Maybe they compete on Saturday. We'll see.
You
But
never know.
you got to make sure the wheels don't completely fall off, because then you're staring at your second straight 0-11 season. That's no fun for anyone around there. But let's turn the page. The other teams at NMU, the other fall teams, looking great. We'll start by talking about volleyball. I talked to Mike Lozier this afternoon. They went 2-1. A couple of big wins on Friday. Finley, a team they got swept by at home. They go to 5 sets and win that one over Finley. That's a big confidence booster. Then they beat UIndy, another solid team. This when all the teams from their region in D2, because they're divided in regions, which are especially important for volleyball and basketball in those D2 tournaments. So they're all in one place. It's a really great event. So NMU goes 2-0 on Friday, and then they fall to Rockhurst in 4 on Saturday. You have to imagine they were a little gassed after Friday, but at the same time, every team in that tournament's in the same boat, and that 4th set was so close. So they almost pushed it to 5, and in a 5th set, anything can happen. So NMU, great weekend for them. Allie Barlow, their setter, was the setter of the week in the GLIAC, well-deserved. Mike Lozier says great things about her all the time. I think the thing about the Wildcats is they know exactly who they are at this point with the vets.
Yeah.
They have in Megan Meyer in the middle and Jackie Smith, their number one hitter. And on the other side of that, you have Helen Byring and their hitters on the other side have been really good at supplementing what Jackie Smith can do, which is be a force. But sometimes she's, limited. Go to the other side. They know exactly who they are, and it bodes well, and that's the reason why they were on a 6-game winning streak before Saturday. So they're really good, and they got to keep building towards the NCAA tournament, because I think that's really in their future if they keep playing the way they've been playing.
Yeah, the Wildcats are playing electric volleyball, and it's exciting to see how it all is coming together. What Megan Meyer's doing, what Jackie Smith is doing, Mackenzie Gruner in the middle, Ellen Byring.
Yeah,
on the
Gruner
outside.
was great. It's probably unfair to them that the last game I watched was that Roosevelt game where they didn't have Jackie Smith and they didn't have Megan Meyer, and they dropped a set to Roosevelt, which is they're not a good team. So Mike Lozier was not too thrilled after that one, but at the same time, they have depth too, and that's huge for a team who has one of the best hitters in D2 in Smith. So you think about a night where she's not on, maybe it's a Gruner or it's a Byring, because they're all really good top to bottom, and they showed it going up against teams outside their conference this weekend. I just like where they're at, and I said to Mike Lozier too, the schedule doesn't do you any favors. They got to go to Grand Valley on
Tough
Friday,
place to play. Yeah.
which is a bona fide NCAA tournament team. But the way he expressed it, they got rested up yesterday. They weren't on the floor. Recovery is obviously very important for volleyball players. You think about how taxing it is to go up and down for 5 sets in some cases, and then go out there and play again, do it again. So they're getting their bodies right, according to Mike Lozier, early this week, and building up to what he called a big opportunity at Grand Valley, because he likes the mentality of his team too, where they're not really caught up in who's better than them and things like that. Deer in the headlights situation, they don't get like that. So if they go in and compete with Grand Valley, it's another example of why this team is really set up for something great come the postseason.
No, I agree exactly. And I mean, if we flip to Michigan Tech now, Midwest crossover for them, 2-1 as well.
Yep.
They responded, I think. Right, it's a tough one to drop to Quincy.
Yeah. They got swept, and then they turned it around and swept themselves.
Yeah. So a great response from them. Also a huge boost. They lose to Finlay at their place early in the season.
Yep.
Up at Houghton, and then they come back and they get them here at the Midwest crossover. So it bodes well for Michigan Tech. I think Rachel Zurich in that new position that she's in is doing great things for them. It's exciting to see both NMU and Michigan Tech playing some really good volleyball.
Yeah, and maybe NMU is a little bit further along, just thinking about the rivalry game they played at Vandement, where the Cats came out on top in 4, but Tech knows who they are too. So really solid weekend for them. Tough weekend to be Finley, going up against these GLIAC teams from the UP, but excited to watch them going forward, and obviously they have the same schedule as NMU flipped this weekend, so Grand Valley on Saturday after Wayne State on Friday. Women's soccer, it was a weekend split for NMU. John Sandoval not happy that they weren't able to sustain the success from Friday night, where they won 4-1. Justina Lesperance had a hat trick and then assisted on the other goal. She's been awesome, leads the conference in goals, assists, points. Really good. And, Sandoval mentioned how, Molly Pistorius, the reigning conference player of the year, maybe doesn't have those stats that Lesperance has. But it's like in football, your top wide receiver is going to draw the most attention. Your best player offensively, on paper is Molly Pistorius. She draws a lot of the attention, and Lesperance has really emerged for this team. That was a great win on Friday, and then a letdown on Sunday against Davenport, 1-0. They couldn't get going. Sandoval said Davenport was the tougher team. I believe that to be true, but the good news is you get to close out your conference home season with Roosevelt and Purdue Northwest this weekend. I think it should be a sweep. The Wildcats should probably feel the same way. They think every weekend should be a sweep, but this weekend, Roosevelt, Purdue, Purdue's no joke, but get it done.
Yeah, take care of business and head into your conference tournament on a high note with a sweep. It's important that I think that they do that. Build that confidence. Not that they don't have confidence; they obviously already do. But see the ball go into the net a few more times. I mean, they put up 6 on Roosevelt, so you expect them to probably have a similar amount of goals. I would say 4+ is the department against Roosevelt, and then don't quote me, but Purdue Northwest, they beat
correct.
3-1.
I can look it up.
3-1, I think. So you gotta get those.
No, they drew with them.
Oh, they
0-0. So again,
you gotta put goals up. Yeah.
You got to get points from teams like that. Yeah. So that's their senior day. It'll be pretty big. And then the following Friday, November 1st, they had their final home game against Parkside. So, it's a big weekend. Tech, another team that put up 6 on Roosevelt earlier in this year. Roosevelt will be in Houghton on Sunday. But for the Huskies, they haven't scored since then.
Yeah.
5 games in a row.
Yeah, it's coming, right? And talking with Melissa Kuhar today,
it's got to be more frustrating than anything, because there's no soccer players, there's no forwards on your team that say, oh, we're not going to score this game. They don't go into games like that. So when you have stretches like this where that is the case, you just can't score. That's been an issue for them all year, and I think that's what brings them down to not being one of the top teams in the GLIAC like they were last year. Is they don't have the consistency on offense to score repeatedly, and yeah, that's hurt them. That's part of the reason why they're on this losing streak, most of the reason.
Yeah, and I think this weekend presents a great opportunity for them to really bounce back and get back on track. Melissa Kuhar said there was a lot of good that came out of that 2-0 Ferris State loss. Obviously you haven't scored, so it's a priority against a team that you've put 6 goals up against already this year. Just, put 6 goals in the net. Like, find it, however you got to do, or find some goals, build that confidence here as you go through the rest of the season.
Well, there's no reason not to have confidence in that one based on what happened last time. Just honestly, the type of team Roosevelt is.
You're also at home.
Tech hasn't been impressive, but they're, world's better than Roosevelt, so they got to show it, right?
Yeah.
We'll see if that happens. I agree. I think, I think they score on Friday against Purdue.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll see what happens against Roosevelt. They did score in that one. They lost to Purdue 2-1 earlier in the season. So close out talking about these two schools with NMU men's soccer, and that was a great way to close out the conference home season on Sunday.
Yeah.
Tommaso Lamy get the ball to the Italians, 2 goals.
To the Italians.
He was the conference's player of the week for that, and that's a guy who's not going to be around next year. He's the captain. Battled through injuries, especially this offseason. He wasn't on the field much. He wasn't working out. But the season he's having, and exclamation point on it, of course, they have a few more games to go, and then the conference tournament as well. But at the same time, to end his time in Marquette like that on Sunday was really cool.
Yeah, and that first goal, Alessandro Scialonga finds him. He puts it in. And then the second goal.
Italian.
The second goal, and I said it on the broadcast Sunday, might be the most beautiful sequence of soccer that I've seen them play. And I've seen them play a lot, but it's, Lutage to Lazar to Lamy to Lutage back to Lamy shoots.
Yeah.
And they're moving the ball up the field.
It was a great sequence,
They are going to be, they'll lose Lamy after this year, but they are a young team, right?
Yeah.
That you return Scialonga, who can find it, Davian Gums, William Uchenna. You lose Kyle Cameron and Logan Lazar along with Lamy. But this team is showing, obviously they've already doubled their wins from a year ago. They sit at 5-6-2.
That's huge right there.
Yeah.
That's the growth you wanted to see out of the football program this year that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
It's happened for the men's soccer team.
They have 3 games left. 3, I think, on the schedule.
Yeah.
I think that they've...
And just Roosevelt this weekend, so they're just locked in. They don't have to travel till Saturday. So Fadovich said that's really nice. That's a plus.
Yeah. They lost 1-0 against Roosevelt. I watched that game. That's a team they can go out and beat. Go on the road. Go get that one. Go get it. Get the ball to the Italians.
I think after this Sunday, they definitely have the confidence, or at least should, to go in there and take care of business against Roosevelt. So we'll see if that happens. Fadovich also mentioned the game before that, 1-0 loss to Saginaw. That's a really good team. They battled. He said he liked the way they played. And I mentioned it had to be frustrating just not getting one across in a game where he played that well, and he agreed, and that's part of the reason why Sunday was so sweet. Another young team we have to talk about before we go, NMU hockey, getting their first win this weekend. First win under Dave Shyak. They're now 1-4. I said this to you earlier. I like how Dave Shyak doesn't have lofty expectations in terms of the results, but he has a very high standard with what he expects to see on the ice.
Yeah.
And, the compete level out of his players. And he's been getting that so far, and I think that's why they won on Friday. Watching that game, they go up in the first period. It was Tanner Latch, their captain, who scored. It was set up beautifully in the neutral zone, grabbing a puck from Tynan Newert, who was the defensive player of the week in the conference. He gets it over to Latch, and 1-0. And then, they give up a goal in the second period, respond with a hustle play from Molduk, which was great to see, 2-1. Then they go the entire third period, no one scores. They held their ground. That's the reason why they got the win. So 2-1, that was big for the Wildcats, certainly, after coming off a weekend against a really good Colorado College team
Yeah.
where you fought, but you just didn't have enough to win in either of those games. They get the win on Friday. They were pretty gassed on Saturday. Outshot.
Yeah.
Like
Doubled, almost tripled, yeah.
Yeah, so not great in that category, but, this makes sense to me when Dave Chiak says it is, these guys haven't played this much in D1.
Yeah, there's no fighting
None
for
of them.
ice time this year. You're going to get ice time, and I think it's a product of building that endurance and really learning, okay, what is a weekend like playing on Friday, playing on Saturday, and they will, right? 16 of 28 on their roster are freshmen.
Yeah.
So they're young, but I like Dave Chiak and his mentality of, okay, results. I'm not. Our expectation this year isn't to, win, go to the Frozen Four and win it all, right? Our expectation right now is we're going to play as hard as we can every game for 3 periods, and when you do that, you're going to get results, right?
And that's why, they're probably not going to win the conference this year. They would just be happy to be in the Mason Cup playoffs and, have a chance to go on a run there. Just keep getting better and build something. That's what you're trying to do, is build something out of nothing. You had 4 returning players.
I think a big part is they've already got that first win, so they know what it feels like.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true too. And you have a really good Arizona State team coming in this weekend.
Yeah.
You're not guaranteed one. It helps to be at home. You don't have to go to Tempe like they did last year. So you're staying home. Arizona State's really good. You might not come out on top, but another chance to get ready for conference season, which starts the following week with Tech. They're off and running. So they were outshot 49-25, so almost doubled on Saturday. That's tough. They got outshot 32-20 in the win on Friday. So that was one thing Chiak mentioned even after both of those games, and then again today, that they just need to spend more time in their O-zone. They're not possessing the puck as much as they would like to. So that's something to pay attention to this weekend with Arizona State coming in. It'll be tough, like I said, in both of those games, but you might see some growth and, maybe even out those shots a little bit to, prove that they're able to keep the ball in their own zone and, turn it into goals maybe. Should be a fun weekend of hockey in Marquette. Michigan Tech also home this week after being off last weekend. Clarkson comes in. They're 2-0. Those 2 wins over Alaska Fairbanks. So, what's the vibe around the Huskies?
You got to take care of business. I think they're coming into your place. Clarkson, not a guaranteed 2 wins. They played pretty well against Notre Dame and also beat Vermont.
Yeah.
So, you have to take care of business, right? You got to skate. I think, talking with Joe Shannon, one of their assistant coaches today, they've got to play good 5-on-5 hockey, right? Stay out of the box, do the right things, and they should be all right. And when you play at Michigan Tech, I mean, that atmosphere I think just boosts them so much more. So get going early, skate 5-on-5, limit penalties, don't go into the box.
Yeah, I mean, the Alaska series, it was their first time out there, and, real game atmosphere. They didn't play all that well. They certainly didn't play perfectly, but they came out of there with 2 wins. Especially this time of year, I think that's all you can ask for. Thinking about last year when, of course, they were an NCAA tournament team, they were bad in October. They didn't win a game in October.
Yeah.
So to start out that way is huge. They have an opportunity to build on that against Clarkson this week. So excited to watch them. And then we have a rivalry series November 1st and 2nd, the following weekend. So it's all building up there. One quick thing before we go, we got to talk about Kingsford and Marquette soccer.
Yes.
Almost time for them to get going. Kingsford, 5 o'clock at Gaylord, taking on Montague. So a downstate team, they're meeting in the middle. Same thing for Marquette, but we're rooting for these teams hard. UP Power, the only 2 UP teams left in the state tournament. I mean, there's only, I think, 5 high school programs in the UP, so to have 2 still alive is pretty good. But Kingsford, they want to keep it rolling. They're 16-1-1. They're a really good team.
Yeah, and talking with head coach Jeff Gordon, it's all about their formation, staying in formation. Now they have guys that play up and down all over the field, but it's staying in that formation. And if somebody gets out of formation, who's the next guy up to fill that spot until so-and-so gets back? Jet and Jackson Buckley, I think, go out and do what you guys do. I think they're
very
a marvel to
cool
watch.
Names.
Yeah.
Jet and Jackson.
Yeah, they're going to be
Flivver
good.
brothers.
Yeah.
And we've shot a couple of their games where those guys are good.
Yeah, they're good, and they're going to bring it. Coach Gordon also said that Montague is going to play similar to how Grayling did, so they'll be, it'll be a similar game. They've played at Gaylord before, too. I think that's going to be a comfortable feeling, playing in a place that you're familiar with.
Yeah.
Stay in formation, start early, make the easy pass, and I think that it'll be exciting.
I'm looking forward to it. Now, Marquette I caught up with Monday night. They were practicing on the football field, which, of course, is turf, under the lights, 7 o'clock yesterday. Don't die on me.
Yeah,
we can't lose you. We got 5 more minutes here, right? But Marquette under the lights practicing on the turf Monday. I like that.
I do.
They said the turf's going to play a little bit faster than what they're used to on grass. They've won their 2 postseason games at home in dominant fashion. 5-0 over Gaylord middle of last week, and then they come out on Saturday 6-0 over Petoskey. They scored on set pieces, the first 4 goals.
Yeah.
So they've been really good in that department. They were 2 for 5 on corner kicks, so 40%. That's a clip you'll take any day of the week.
Yep.
This is all coming from their head coach, Dan Salmon, who's telling me about how they've gotten better over the course of the year, relying on some of their senior leadership. It's good to see these 2 teams are real teams. And being at Marquette practice yesterday, I saw that. They have real leadership. They have guys who are bought in to what they're trying to do. And for Marquette, they're 16-3-2. It's helped them a lot and led to a lot of success. Now, the interesting part about this, and it's not that shocking given, the few number of teams here in the UP that their path in the postseason is pretty similar every year, but it's been the exact same for Marquette. They beat Petoskey to win the district last year. They do that, obviously, on Saturday. This round in the regional semifinals, they faced Fruitport. It was a 2-0 loss. So they fell to Fruitport last year. Same team tonight in Gaylord. Really fun. I was asking those guys, do you think about revenge? And I got different answers. Because some of them are like, yes, we want to beat that team that beat us last year. That was the worst feeling ever, pretty much. And then you had the other side of it was, we treat every opponent the same. And, it doesn't matter who they are. But I think either way you look at that, you think
they want to win.
They want to win. They want to win really bad. So I like that we got a little dichotomy there from the Marquette Sentinels. But bottom line is we want this one bad. We want to have a chance to play for a regional. I think both of these teams have a good chance to do that and be playing for a regional come Thursday. So we'll have highlights of that one Tuesday night this evening on your late news. Looking forward to it. Hopefully no issues with the stream. Fingers crossed there, and that we can identify any goal scorers. That's the other thing with those streams. But that's going to do it for this edition of UP Power. Thanks for joining us. Subscribe to TV6 and Fox UP on YouTube, and of course, download TV6 Plus on your Roku or Amazon Fire or Apple TV, and you can catch us that way as well. There are so many different ways to consume this podcast and all of the content we put out here from this newsroom at TV6. So for Keegan Cooper, I'm Kevin McNulty, and we'll catch you next week.